Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Crossroads. I am your host, Rashida Green, and this is the show for and about environmental justice and those who fight the fight with skin as melanated as the days are long. Knowledge is power, and I am angry as fuck today. I'm sorry. I'm going to be honest with you all today. It took a lot for me to do this show today. I didn't really have anything specific. I think I wanted to talk about something a little more lighthearted, like coffee waste, if that sounds like something that's lighthearted to you. But obviously, in light of the things that have been going on recently, what we're seeing right now, that people across the country, people across the world, are angry, and they're in the streets and they're setting shit on fire. And normally, I would definitely be someone to do that. This weekend, these times, I've got to refocus and rechannel my energy. And oftentimes what I do when I get really angry or really upset or have a very strong emotion in general is I just put my energy someplace else, and that might sound like avoiding, that might sound like, I'm escaping, but it is my way of staying productive and staying on top of it. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer out. I'm going to give it to you straight this episode. But first, I'm going to give some flowers. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Fanon Bure, Robert White, Monica Diamond, Nina Pop. So for those of you who don't know who Fanon Bure is, he was actually a man who was shot and killed in White Oak, which is a city or a town in Maryland, in the month of May. The only initial reports are that he had a knife and was charging towards the officer, and that is why he was shot and killed. And if you don't know who Robert White is, he was shot and killed in the Silver Spring, Three Oaks area, also in Maryland, and he was shot and killed in 2018. He was unarmed and mentally ill. He was known in the community as someone who was nonviolent and shot and killed anyway, and he was acquitted of any wrongdoing. And Monica Diamond is a trans woman who was murdered in North Carolina, and Nina Pop was murdered in Missouri. And there's also several women in Puerto Rico who were also trans women who were found buried. And I'm giving flowers to all of them because they've all died under horrifying circumstances. And yes, right now, the center and the focus of our anger and our frustration is police brutality. And I do plan to touch on that today. But this show is about intersection, and this show is about freedom. And I'm not going to miss an opportunity to also bring into the conversation those who are victims of brutality of another name or by another hand, and someone or a group of folks who are often victims of treachery are trans women, trans men too, trans community, period. And that's especially prevalent in the Black community. And I am going to bring that up because there's a couple things that we all are going to have to get comfortable with, and that is managing multiple priorities. They ask for that stuff on job applications. They want to know if you can manage multiple priorities and you can handle those things, and that is what we as a community have to get comfortable with. Two or more things can be true at the same time, and they can occur at the same time. You can be broke but having the best day of your life, right? So we as a people are going to have to talk about murder at the hands of the police and what the fuck we need to do to get that under control and taken care of, and also what we're going to have to do internally with the way that we treat people who are not heterosexual. And this show is for everybody. And I don't make any exceptions about people based upon their sexual orientation or their gender identity or any of these things, girl. I don't care. I have friends in all walks. So everybody needs to be respected because we're not all free until we're all free. We're not free until we're all free. We're not all free until we are all free. So, yeah, that's it. That's just, I just wanted to make that statement and make that plain. So this show, I'm going to really be talking about a piece of legislation that needs to be really examined very thoroughly. It is the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. I'm going to be talking about that today. I'm also going to be talking about states that have upcoming primaries or state elections. I'm going to name some of those that are coming up for the month of June. And at the time this is going to be up, I'm getting more routine about posting. So I'm making certain that we have episodes out every Tuesday. So by the time this airs, that's going to be June the 2nd. And by that date, if you are in a certain state, you need to have your ballot already. It can be postmarked by June 2nd, which means that you've already gone to the post office and they've stamped it for that day, and it will still be counted. But you need to make sure you get that done. And each state, they probably have already sent you your ballot, and you should read the instructions very carefully. If there's ample resources available, and mine in the state of Maryland, they provided where you can drop your ballot off at, who can help you and support you. It was in English and in Spanish. So please make certain, and I know you've seen it on social media, like that comes up on Facebook, like, hey girl, your election time is coming. So you all should have an idea when that is. And if you do not, I will let you know. But for those who I'm going to name, whose elections are on Tuesday, the June 2nd, you should already be hopefully, prayerfully, you have already taken care of that. I know a lot of organizations right now are out here making certain to support folks with that effort to get their ballots mailed in, etc. So please make certain to do that. So the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. So this came after a couple of Supreme Court cases. I did not do a deep dive into these. I can if folks want to know more information, but I'll just name them. So it's Garrity versus New Jersey of 1967 and Gardner versus Broderick of 1968. And out of those two cases, it became obvious or clear that there was a need to have a method or a due process, quote unquote, for law enforcement officers. So Maryland, believe it or not, was the first state to pass this bill in 1973. And in the state of Maryland, there are ample groups who are really interested in reforming this bill. It's, from my knowledge and my involvement with it, we've been doing the work to try to get that reformed since 2017. I'm sure it's been around for a long time. So obviously there's been amendments and things and changes to it. And this bill also covers prison and jail officers as well. So here's some of now there are 16 states that have enacted their own version of the Bill of Rights. And you should, if I'm going to name these states, and based upon that now, you should definitely do some research and figure out what your specific state's stance is, what's included in this Bill of Rights. I'm sure if you went to the Fraternal Order of Police's website for your state, it'll come up. I've been able to research it for the state of Maryland. I've read through it, and you should do the same thing. I'm going to provide some of the highlights, if that's what you want to call it, that are pretty standard by state. But there is still, you need to read your own for your own state. So some of the things that stand out the most for the Bill of Rights is that if someone files a complaint against a police officer, that police department can decide whether or not to investigate it. If they do, the police officer is notified. He and the police union are all notified. They're also told who is filing a complaint. Now, you just give yourself a minute to think about that and all the cop shows that you see and think about why that's problematic. Police officers are also allowed what's called a cool-off period after an incident has occurred and before an investigation really gets off. They're allowed to calm down and cool out, which you know that if you're a regular citizen that's been arrested, you don't get that. There's also a time limit on how long an officer can be interrogated. So I just wanted to point back to the Central Park Five, those children who were falsely accused of raping a woman, and what kinds of concessions they were given. Oh, right. They weren't giving any. Okay. Police officers also cannot be questioned or investigated by non-government agencies. or agents. So that means that civilian review boards, and there's some talk about, we're trying to do that in Maryland to really like make certain that the review board is representative of the community. But in general, they are not, by states, they are not allowed to investigate or interrogate the police officer. That can only be done by a police officer or a government agent, like the FBI, for example. And as we've also seen, if a police officer is suspended for any type of wrongdoing, they can still receive benefits. And we've seen that officers are being placed on administrative leave. That's exactly what it's talking about. The states that have a Bill of Rights: California, Delaware, Florida, Illinois, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, as I've mentioned, Minnesota, Nevada, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. States with upcoming elections. So the first group of states I'm going to name are states that have their elections are June 2nd. So again, you should all hopefully, prayerfully, please, for the love of God, I hope you've gotten your ducks in a row so that you can vote. So that's Maryland, Montana, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Dakota. June 9th, Georgia, Nevada, North Dakota, South Carolina, West Virginia. June 23rd, Kentucky. And I'm going to put a pin in Kentucky because that's a big one. They're all big, they're all important, but I'm going to do a quick highlight on Kentucky a little bit later in the show. Going to Maryland specifically. So Maryland is a state that boasts diversity. It's a state that, at least on the surface, is Democratic. Yes, that was shade. And it's a state of prosperity. You know, Montgomery County in Maryland is considered to be one of the more wealthy counties in the state and also in the country. It's also considered to be, Montgomery County is considered to be a minority majority, meaning that there's a wealth of population of people of color. State's also got some serious racial profiling issues. There's also been some work and some legislation around trying to reform that as well, because the majority of stops are based on race. And there's a long list of other things that can happen after someone is pulled over and something is found after the particular stop, which is the seizure as well. The state was investigated by the Department of Justice following the Freddie Gray incident, where a lot of this was uncovered. A lot of the racial profiling and police brutality is very prevalent in the state of Maryland. And there are some things that, because I've been specifically involved in some of the police brutality efforts, that I've become aware of. And this is just strictly by going to meet with the police and actually doing the research myself. And that is why I am going to very strongly encourage you right now and throughout this show to really get to know your police chief, get to know them. There are organizations that meet with the police on a regular basis. I believe they meet weekly or monthly. And they have, I'm not saying that's for everybody. You know, the meetings that I've been in with the police have been very, very difficult because they were following the murder of Robert White, who I mentioned and gave some flowers to. But going back to Maryland very quickly, there's another person that I want to name as well. You know, I've already talked very quickly about Freddie Gray, but I'm also going to talk about someone named William Green, who was shot while in handcuffs, not posing a threat, and killed. And the police officer who killed him has had previous shooting incidents in 2009 and 2011. And there's interest in investigating whether the Bill of Rights, the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, had a hand in interfering with a proper investigation of these two incidences. How is it that that police officer has been allowed to discharge his firearm on two other people? And then here it is, he's killed a third person. Now, granted, he's not protected for this particular shooting of William Green because he was charged with second-degree murder. But like, okay, so he was he was charged with second degree. What about everybody else? How is it that and then on top of that, with this particular person, how was he allowed to get a gun back, to be allowed and considered to fit for duty after he shot two people? And within 2 years, between 2009 and 2011, he shot some people. Why? How was he allowed to get away with that? I wanted to call that out. I wanted to make sure that I touched on the need to reform this bill, the need to get rid of it, and to really, really talk about what the Civilian Review Board should be and should look like. It should be that civilians are 100% consulted and informed about what is going on when police officers step out of their police room, or whatever the hell the precinct, to go outside with a gun and police. Because something that we should, and what I learned when I was involved with the Robert White incident, is that first of all, you need less education. It takes less time to become a police officer than it does to get your college degree. And I want to put that out there for everybody. You know, I'm in school right now. I know a lot of you are also probably in school or finishing up or were in school at one point. And I want you to know that in less time that probably took you, you could have become a police officer with a gun. Taser training is optional. And regardless, a police officer is trained to shoot first and shoot for the center of mass, which will kill you. That's your chest. Yeah. So, and these are things, again, I just learned these things because I was involved, because I had to do the research. I had to get online and look it up. And one quick word, just very quickly, because I know people are angry. I know people want answers. And I understand that people are out in the streets and that shit is getting set on fire. And there's a lot of talk about how that looks and like who's allowed and what. And, you know, the popular phrase that I've been seeing is that there's a need to police black anger. And I absolutely agree with that. I definitely think that. And the word for that we've come up with is respectability politics. This concept that if you look a certain way and you take care of yourself and you carry yourself in a certain way or manner, that people won't fuck with you, which we all know is complete and absolute bullshit. And I'm naming that and I'm saying that because it doesn't matter how we dress. You said that Trayvon Martin, you know, he had a hoodie on, you know, okay. What about Tamir Rice? He wasn't wearing a hoodie. He was just playing a game. How is it that he was shot and killed? And then, you know, briefly when I was reading about Fanon Bure, I thought, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his last name. His last name is spelled Behre. So if I'm mispronouncing it, I apologize. He had a knife, but Dylan Roof shot 9 fucking people in a goddamn church. How is it he lived? How is it that he was detained and done so alive? So don't tell me that you can't do it. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear it. I have watched cops. You've watched people apparently spend a lot of time watching Discover ID or whatever those channels are. And you all see white folks are wildin'. It is literally girls gone wild with the cops. They're falling out of their sunroofs. They're running. They let the officer get to the door and they drive away like wildin'. And how is it? How is it that they manage to stay alive? But you mean to tell me that a man who is mentally ill, and another thing really quickly, and something that I want to say, if for all y'all who, I don't understand this idea of like watching footage of someone being shot and killed, and maybe that brings you comfort. I don't know, but I will say this, and this is my personal experience and story that I'm sharing with you. I watched the police footage of Robert White being killed, and I am not right. And I'm being very transparent and very honest about it. I don't talk about it, but when I do, I realized like how traumatizing it was to watch that. I don't know why in the hell any of you want to watch that shit. I don't know if you're doing it and you're sort of disengaging from what's happening. And I've been that person. I can watch things and disengage. For example, funny story to lighten the mood. I told Brandy, who you've met before on the show, friend to the room, I've asked her to watch the show Chernobyl on HBO. I've watched it so many times. And I watch it because I'm trying to understand the science. I'm trying to understand what's going on. And, it's the graphite tips, the whole nine, right? And I told her to watch it, and like some time had gone by and she didn't say anything about it. And then all of a sudden, sister girl called me and cussed me out. She was like, how were you able to watch this and then not be freaking out about it? And I was like, I don't know, girl. I just got really into the science. And yeah, I did. I really did get into the science and had to completely forget that like the Ukrainian people lost their lives like on a mass scale. Not just the ones who were buried or entombed inside the reactor, not the firemen who also had to lose their lives because they were exposed to radiation, or even the people who were on the bridge watching it and caught the breeze, caught the breeze and got it in their nostrils. Not even that. I divorced myself of that so I could focus on the science. So if that's what you guys are doing with watching people being shot, fine. That's just not my jam. Don't tag me. Don't send it to me. I am not interested. It'll be 2 years since Robert White was killed. And I'm telling you as a human being that I realized that at that moment, watching that, I'd made a mistake. And maybe that has had some impact on why I haven't been able to be as involved. Maybe. But that was my limit. And the way that I have chosen to handle what's going on right now is for me to acknowledge it, for me to acknowledge what happened. I don't need to watch it. I just need to know that a person lost their lives. I need to, unfortunately, commit their name to memory. And I need to find a constructive way for me to move forward. Keeping their name in my memory, keeping them in my memory, but doing something else so that I can go forward. And it's heavy. It's heavy. It's hard having to cycle through all the names of the people who have died. It's hard, and I don't like it. And this is my method of activism. This is my interpretation of what I need to be doing. So I'm not saying this to condemn anyone's choice. If you want to go out right now and you want to burn some shit, look, I get it. If you just want to stay inside and cry, if you just want to lay down and just check out for a little bit, I think that's fine too. But I would ask, once you're done fighting, once you're done crying, once you're done burning or setting fire, I would just ask that you get informed. You make sure that you know when your legislative session is going to occur. You make sure that you know who is in your district. You know these people, you get to know them, and you bug the shit out of them. If you live in a state with the Bill of Rights for police officers, you need to figure out what yours says. You need to figure out who is your representative on the local level, and you need to get in that person's ear. You need to be doing just like we're doing in the state of Maryland, trying to get some change happening, some reform. Now, and I'm going to talk very quickly, changing the subject or switching gears a little bit, and talk a little bit about reform. But I'm going to talk about it from the context of colonialism. And Frantz Fanon, and if you don't know who he is, please look up Frantz Fanon's book. I read Wretched of the Earth in college, and it changed my life. So please get to know him. And quick shout out to @BlackIsTooBeautiful on Instagram. She gave me a library full of amazing resources, videos, books, interviews from you name it. And obviously, Wretched of the Earth was one of them. But I'm really going to be talking about this. This is actually from Toward the African Revolution. So something he says about colonialism is that it is a conquest of a national territory and oppression of a people. It's the organization of the domination of a nation after military conquest. And we can think of how many examples of that, of colonialism, British colonialism, French colonialism. He also goes on to say something about the war of liberation. He says, it is not seeking reform. It's for people to rediscover their own genius, history, and sovereignty. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm saying this because I think that that's the place that we're in. I know reform is a very popular word. You know, we hear it when it's attached to criminal justice. You know, we're hearing some about it with regards to healthcare. You know, we're reforming it, changing it over and making it slightly better. But, you know, just as I was saying on the Radical Imagination episode with Brandy, you know, I do struggle sometimes to imagine a bigger future, but I can tell you that we are not going to get there on reform alone. And while, yes, we do need to try to make moderate steps, if we want to get to the future for real, it has to be radical. Think about what's going on right now. Think about what we're experiencing right now. You know, right now, we've completely changed our business for the future. Like, we have accelerated very quickly into the technology that we're having to use, to everything. Like, yes, we may be able to go back outside soon. And yeah, it's quite possible that Amazon, after they buy AMC, will open the movie theaters back up. But like, who knows? It might be that we just all view movies in our own houses and we just we have our own foods and beverages and we pay for it using a streaming service. That's looking more like the future. What I'm saying is, and the point is that our future is changing, and we're changing the way we're doing things right now. So it took the coronavirus to do it, just a sudden change, a sudden event that created a ripple effect. So if we're talking about what else can change, we're going to have to start thinking about this on a radical level. So I encourage people, and myself, I'm doing this too, to think more radically. So you need to get into the faces of these people and not just ask for them to just piecemeal reform it, but we need to talk about some radical solutions. We need to talk about some radical actions. And, you know, it's funny because Cornel West mentioned that Trump is the fire in talking about, in sort of a play on words for James Baldwin's book, The Fire Next Time. He said he is the fire. And, you know, thinking about Trump, who, you know, I don't like to talk to, I actually had a dream that I talked to him. It was really wild. And I mean, I didn't talk to him because he was a punk. I was supposed to debate him, and he pulled it out at the last minute, and I told Jay-Z about it, and he just shrugged his shoulders at me. I have a very vivid imagination. Getting back to the point, of course, is that we are seeing what the president of the United States is saying about people who are out in these streets, who are angry and protesting what has gone on, specifically with George Floyd. He called them thugs. He also said that when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And that was something that was used by George Wallace, who was a very popular segregationist who ran for president, I think, in 1968. And it was also used by the Miami police chief, Walter Headley, who was also very well known for mistreating Black communities in Miami. And that was said as a response to I believe, a police-related murder. So, you know, and the thing is, something else I want to bring up too, and if you guys if you're avid listeners of the show, you know, I've had Ken Thompson on the show a few times, and something he said on Twitter was that, you know, we're trying to paint this image of the people who are out in the streets protesting as thugs, or as, you know, these horrible, awful people. But like, we read about the Boston Tea Party, and are they called thugs? No, they're not actually. I don't recall hearing that term or seeing that term in my book when I read about them. And they did destroy property as well. And that was his point. That was Ken's point. And he is 100% absolutely correct. And if we're talking about going back to what Frantz Fanon said about the war of liberation, it can't be done with reform. And the point I'm just trying to make is I encourage everyone to really start to think more radically. Even, it doesn't matter how crazy it is. It doesn't matter how much money it costs. You see how much money it would have cost for them to fix the dam in Michigan, and what happened as a result of them not doing it, right? So forget the money. We need to make sure that we are doing the right things and that we are on top of what's going on in our communities. So some groups that I've personally found that I think that you should investigate a little more or figure out how to join or how to support them, donate to them. First and foremost, no surprises, Black Lives Matter. There's a Black Lives Matter chapter in every state. Find them, donate to them, join and volunteer. In Maryland, we have the Job Opportunities Task Force, and I've shouted them out before. And they are based in Baltimore, and they are amazing. They've got reports that you can read. My personal favorite, if that's what you want to call it, is the criminalization of poverty. Please read that. It's completely free. You can download it on their website. But they are very much so involved in every legislative session that we have. They are advocates. They worked with it. They do expungement clinics. If you are someone that needs reentry support, Job Opportunities Task Force is that group. Another group, Silver Spring Justice Coalition. They were, as I mentioned, they were very involved with the shooting death of Robert White. They've held vigils. They've held rallies, organizing, you name it. They are also very involved in the legislative session as well. Another group that's really amazing and excellent and doing really great work based in Baltimore is Out for Justice. They have amazing reentry services. And I've talked about reentry on this podcast before, but when we're talking about reentry, we're talking about where people are going to stay, getting them IDs, the technology that they're going to need, organizing their paperwork, all of these things. And this program, this organization encourages folks who have come out to also get involved and make a difference in the life of others who are coming out of incarceration. The ACLU, they're controversial. I understand that, but they're still out here, and they're nationwide. There's state level chapters. There's local chapters, possibly by your county. So look into that as well. Another group is the Michigan Liberation, and they have a committee to abolish death by incarceration. It's a statewide network of organizations that are trying to end criminalization of Black families. Look them up. And I'll link them. Another really amazing group is Solutions Not Punishment Collaborative. And this is Black trans-led collaborative who were working to decriminalize sex work. And I wanted to give them some props as well and uplift them. Also, look into the Mass Liberation Project. They are also very involved in incarceration work. Asada's Daughters, Black woman-led group based in Chicago. And again, donate to these groups. Follow them on social media. Repost their posts. If that's the best that you can muster right now, do that. But if you got $5, hand it over to them. Every dollar helps. Every hand helps. And another person that I wanted to uplift is Cariol Horne. So Cariol Horne was a police officer, I believe in Buffalo, New York. And she did the right thing. She reported a fellow officer who had choked a suspect. She reported him. She lost her pension. She was fired, lost her pension, and did the right thing. And you see, she was punished for it. Amplify her message. We need to have more police officers like this woman, but you see what they have to go against. You see what can possibly happen to them. Now, she says she doesn't regret it. She says that she would do it again, but look at what it costs. And this is, I think, some of the problem that, we in the movements notice, which is that there are high prices to pay for doing the right thing, that doing the right thing can really severely cost you. But you have to decide, I think, at the end of the day, what it's worth. Is the truth worth it? And I feel it is, hands down. And some other folks that you can look out for. I've named some groups. I've named Cariol Horne. Please look her up. But someone that's a little more tangible and also running for office, look into Devin Barrington Ward. He's running for Georgia State Senate, District 38. He cares about health equity, criminal justice reform, environmental racism, and legalization and equity for cannabis for Black people. Look at him. Look into him. And if you're in Kentucky, I'm going to say this, you all know what's going on right now. You know that you've got the Democratic nomination going on for who is going to take on Mitch McConnell, or as I like to call him, human pancake batter. And someone that you can look into, that I think you should look into a little bit more thoroughly, but look at all three of the candidates, is Charles Booker. He's a black man who wants universal basic income. I think he has some legislative experience, and he believes in the Green New Deal. And if for those of you who are interested in more in like the climate change, he's very involved with climate change and climate action, and he was endorsed by the Sunrise Movement. But you can look him up, look Charles Booker up. You don't have to be in the state to do that. If you find someone in another state that you really like and want to get behind, you can donate to their campaign. And I recommend doing that. Donate to Devin Barrington Ward. Donate to Charles Booker. We named a few people, Brandy and I named a few people in the Radical Imagination episode. One of them was Dalvin Osorio, who's running for the Montgomery County Board of Education at large seat. Look into him. Follow them on social media. Donate to them. Volunteer. Another thing that's also coming up that I've noticed too is what's Blackout Day. So that's supposed to be July 7th. Easy peasy. Don't buy shit. Stay your ass in the house and don't buy anything. Which, with the rate of people being out in these streets, I don't think it's going to be that hard to stay home. Everybody's out here and unmasked. Okay. So that was a lot. And I am in obviously a very, very feisty mood right now. I thought I was going to be a little more subdued, but I should have known better. And I want everyone to feel your feelings. I want everyone to feel how you're going to feel, but I also want you to put some action behind it too. And I'm talking about real, tangible actions. I've named groups that you can look up and donate to, that you can volunteer with. I've told you about the states that have got upcoming elections. All I can do is what I can. As my mother likes to say, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So I bequeath all of this information and knowledge with the hopes that you will do something about it. We all have to do something about it. We all have to be out here and be active. This is what I keep hammering home about the importance of community. That there's some that are going to want reform. And yeah, sure, if you can fight that pace or keep up with that pace of slow but progressive action, sure. But then there's going to be those of us who want the radical action. And we all have to be in harmony and working together. And like I said too, multiple things can be true at the same time. You know, I've brought up the LGBTQ community, and of course you obviously know, or hopefully you know, that there is really no discrimination when it comes to sexual identity and getting murdered by the police. So I really want everyone to be able and be capable, because one thing that we're going to have to do as a group, as a people, is we're going to have to be able to wrestle more than one issue at the same time. It can't be we wait until black men get first and then we can come as women and then everybody else. No, it's going to have to be massive radical action. It can't just be we do it the couple years of one person and then after we get you together then we can do everything else. No, it has to be all or none. And that's what I'm on today. That's what I'm preaching about today. And I'm really hoping that this information impacts you to and motivates you to take some action. As always, this episode is sponsored by the Black Podcast Collective. You can follow me, Rashida G, at Crossroads Podcast on Instagram. I'm looking at TikTok sideways, so I won't say that I'm on TikTok. I mean, I'm kind of not anyway. I'm like half in, half out. But if you want to follow me on other platforms other than Instagram, you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook, Crossroads Pod C1. I am on all platforms, every single one of them. Don't have to name them piecemeal. Thank God. Won't he do it? And again, thank you all for joining me, and we'll see you at the crossroads. Get out there and get active.